Sento Pace. We are on chapter 3. This is continuation of reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Chapter 3, moving deeply into the now. Don't seek yourself in the mind. I feel that there's still a great deal I need to learn about the workings of my mind before I can get anywhere near full consciousness or spiritual enlightenment. No, you don't. The problems of the mind cannot be solved on the level of the mind. Once you have understood the basic dysfunction, there isn't really much else that you need to learn or understand. Studying the complexities of the mind may make you a good psychologist, but doing so won't take you beyond the mind. Just as the study of madness isn't enough to create sanity. You have already understood the basic mechanics of the unconscious state, identification with the mind, which creates a false self, the ego, as a substitute for your true self rooted in being. That's with a capital B. You become as a branch cut off from the vine, as Jesus puts it. The ego's needs are endless. It feels vulnerable and threatened, and so lives in a state of fear and want. Once you know how the basic dysfunction operates, there is no need to explore all its countless manifestations. No need to make it into a complex personal problem. The ego, of course, loves that. It's always seeking for something to attach itself to in order to uphold and strengthen its illusory sense of self. And it will readily attach itself to your problems. This is why, for so many people, a large part of their sense of self is intimately connected with their problems. Once this has happened, the last thing they want is to become free of them. That would mean loss of self. There can be a great deal of unconscious ego investment in pain and suffering. So once you recognize the root of unconsciousness as identification with the mind, which of course includes the emotions, you step out of it. You become present. When you are present, you can allow the mind to be as it is without getting entangled in it. The mind in itself is not dysfunctional. It's a wonderful tool. Dysfunction sets in when you seek yourself in it and mistake it for who you are. It then becomes the egoic mind and takes over your whole life. And the delusion of time. It seems almost impossible to disidentify from the mind. We are all immersed in it. How do you teach a fish to fly? Here's the key. And the delusion of time. Oh, that's a hard one, isn't it? Just listen. It's a great book. You're going to want to read it more than once. Back to the book. Here's the key. And the delusion of time. Time and mind are inseparable. Remove time from the mind, and it stops unless you choose to use it. To be identified with your mind is to be trapped in time. The compulsion to live almost exclusively through memory and anticipation. This creates an endless preoccupation with past and future, and an unwillingness to honor and acknowledge the present moment and allow it to be. The compulsion arises because the past gives you an identity, and the future holds the promise of salvation, of fulfillment in whatever form. Both are illusions, right? They're not here right now. The only thing that is here right now, now. But without a sense of time, how would we function in this world? There would be no goals to strive toward anymore. I wouldn't even know who I am, because my past makes me who I am today. I think time is something very precious, and we need to learn to use it wisely rather than waste it. Time isn't precious at all, because it's an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of time, the now, and he has the N capitalized. That is precious indeed. The more you are focused on time, past and future, the more you miss the now, the most precious thing there is. It really is. I love reading this book. I need to go back and read it again. If you go back to my earlier videos where I was reading this, it just does something for you. It helps you get back into living in the present. And I'm telling you, love and gratitude just abound. And then that's what you create, because that's where you're at. I'll continue. Why is it the most precious thing? Firstly, because it is the only thing. It's all there is. The eternal present is the space within which your whole life unfolds, the one factor that remains constant. Life is now. There was never a time when your life was not now, nor will there ever be. Secondly, the now is the only point that can take you beyond the limited confines of the mind. It is your only point of access into the timeless and formless realm of being, and that's a capital B. Nothing exists outside the now. And he had that little, if you've watched the earlier videos, I explain why he has that in the book, and it's to pause. And you need to. I'm just going to read a few of these. I'm not even going to read the whole chapter, because just enjoy the now. Nothing exists outside the now. Aren't past and future just as real, sometimes even more real than the present? After all, the past determines who we are. As well as how we perceive and behave in the present. And our future goals determine which actions we take in the present. You haven't yet grasped the essence of what I'm saying, because you are trying to understand it mentally. The mind cannot understand this. Only You can. Please just listen. Have you ever experienced, done, thought, or felt anything outside the now? Do you think you ever will? Is it possible for anything to happen or be outside the now? The answer is obvious, is it not? Nothing ever happened in the past. It happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future. It will happen in the now. What you think of as the past is a memory trace stored in the mind of a former now. When you remember the past, you reactivate a memory trace, and you do so now. The future is an imagined now, a projection of the mind. When the future comes, it comes as the now. When you think about the future, you do it now. Past and future obviously have no reality of their own, just as the moon has no light of its own, but can only reflect the light of the sun. So are past and future only pale reflections of light, power, and reality of the eternal present. Their reality is borrowed from the now. The essence of what I'm saying here cannot be understood by the mind. The moment you grasp it, there is a shift in the consciousness from mind to being, from time to presence. Suddenly, everything feels alive, radiates, energy emanates, being. I'm going to reread that. I do get almost like a high because I can do this, and it puts me in it when I read it, and I love it. The essence of what I'm saying here cannot be understood by the mind. The moment you grasp it, there is a shift in consciousness from mind to being. Of course, that's a capital B. From time to presence. Suddenly everything feels alive, radiates energy, emanates being. And they have a pause. The key to the spiritual dimension. In life-threatening emergency situations, the shift in consciousness from time to presence sometimes happens naturally. The personality that has a past and a future momentarily recedes and is replaced by an intense conscious presence, very still but very alert at the same time. Whatever response is needed then arises out of that state of consciousness. The reason why some people love to engage in dangerous activities, such as mountain climbing, car racing, and so on, although they may not be aware of it, is that it forces them into the now. That intensely alive state that is free of time, free of problems, free of thinking, free of the burden of the personality. Slipping away from the present moment, even for a second, may mean death. Unfortunately, they come to depend on a particular activity to be in that state. But you don't need to climb the north face of the Eiger. You can enter that state now.